Hello everybody, it's Will here from Singletrack magazine and singletrackworld.com, and we've got some very exciting news for you guys today because Shimano is releasing not one but two brand new group sets. That's right, we had XTR 12 speed last year, and this year we're getting both XT and SLX 12 speed. So Shimano is trickling down that technology from the XTR level down to both XT and SLX at the same time. Now we're here in Girona in Spain, just a little bit outside of Barcelona, and we've been riding the new group sets for the past 3 days. So I wanted to give you my first ride impressions of the new group set. We've got brand new gearing, brand new brakes. We've also got new hubs on the XT and SLX group sets. Right now I'm going to take you through the new Deore XT M8100 group set. So this is, of course, 12 speed. That's the big headline news with new XT. And I'm going to run you through each of the components on this bike here I've been riding. Now in terms of gearing, XT will offer both 1x12 and 2x12 options. Unfortunately, there were no 2x drivetrains here at the launch for us to try out, so we'll have to use our imagination on those. But I'll show you this 1x12 setup I've been riding on here. So starting off with the cranks, these are based quite heavily on the XTR cranks. They are hollow aluminium crank arms using the Hollowtech II steel 24mm spindle. No changes there to the BB standard. That's exactly how Shimano's been running for a few years now. Here we're running the single chainring. This has a narrow wide tooth profile, which I believe Shimano calls Dynamic Chain Engagement Plus or something like that. And the whole idea of this narrow wide tooth profile is that the chain interlocks with that profile where you've got narrow and wide openings on the chain, and it hugs it nice and tightly. So as you can see here, no need for a chain guide to stop the chain from bouncing off the chainring. The chainrings themselves, these are going to a direct mount standard, so no longer on previous XT you would have had a 4-bolt pattern. Instead now there is a spline spider on the back of this crank arm, and the chainring slides on and a lock ring tightens it down. Very, very neat, very tidy, and easy to change chainring sizes. Chainring sizes, speaking of, they'll run from 28 tooth up to 36 tooth in 2 teeth increments. Moving to the back here, and this huge XT cassette, this is the 10 to 51. There'll be 2 cassette options with the new XT group set. There'll be 10 to 45 and this one 10 to 51. We think this big 10 to 51 is going to be the most popular option. This is obviously the eagle beating range that Shimano has. 10 to 51 on there with the 1x chainring setup. There will be 2 rear derailleurs to go with this new XT group set. One is designed for the 1x12 setup, and the other derailleur is designed for the 2x12 setup. So 2 different derailleurs, structurally very similar, slightly different geometry in the way that they shift over the cassette. We have, of course, the Shadow Plus friction clutch here, and you can actually turn this off and on. You would turn it off if you were working on the bike or you needed to get the rear wheel out of the bike. That disengages the clutch, and then we can flick that back on again, and that adds tension to the chain. And again, this is all about reducing chain slap on the drivetrain. Keep it quiet, stop that chain from bouncing off the single ring on the front. What's worth noting on the XT derailleur is we've got 13 tooth pulleys, just like XTR. These have seal bearings in them, and that's an upgrade over the SLX derailleur, which uses bushings in the jockey wheels. The other difference is this little bolt here, and this allows you to tighten or loosen the clutch tension in the derailleur, and that's a little external bolt there. You can still do that on SLX derailleurs, but you have to take the cover off. So it's quite neat that you've got this little bolt in there to be able to do that here. So we'll go up to the handlebar where we have a single right-hand shifter. Now this is the Deore XT trigger shifter. Functionally and aesthetically very similar to XTR. We have really punchy up and down shift. There's a really positive click here. You can really feel that feedback through the shifter as you're punching up and down gears. We've got a little rubber pad here on the big thumb paddle, but on the upshift we don't. It's still textured, you can see it's got nice little grooves there, but that's just a plastic paddle, whereas XTR you also get a little rubber paddle there. So very neat indeed. We have a double upshift. When you're going to a harder gear, you can dump 2 at one time, which is quite useful with a 1x drivetrain. With the big paddle here, you can downshift up to 4 gears in one hit, and that's compared to SLX, which you can only downshift 3 gears at a time. With this guy, you can dump 4 gears in the one throw, providing you have a nice long thumb. Mine almost gets there. You've got a bit of a long throw to get there, but in particular that double upshift is really nice. Of course, we've got the new iSpec EV mount, so there's a little bracket here where the shifter bolts onto the same clamp as the brake lever, and this tidies up the cockpit. We only have 1 clamp here instead of 2. Very neat. It gives you about 14 millimeters of lateral adjustment side to side, so you can bring this shifter closer to the grip or further away from the grip depending on where your hand is at and where you want that those paddles set up for your thumb. That brings us to the brake lever, so we'll have a look at this new XT brake lever. Again, very similar to XTR. We have the new mid-mount clamp, so instead of the clamp being on the end of the brake, it's now in the middle, and you can see here there's a small brace on the handlebar, and that means when you engage the brake, the whole assembly is actually braced against the handlebar, and this helps to increase stiffness, gives it a really positive feel. These brakes feel fantastic, by the way, very nice. The new XT brakes will be available in 2 different options. This is the race version. It uses a 2-piston caliper, and this caliper down here that you can see there, it's actually exactly the same as the previous XT disc brake, the M8000. So the caliper itself structurally doesn't change. That's exactly the same. But up at the lever end, obviously this is all brand new. Now the lever is the same whether you go for the race, the 2-piston brake, or the Enduro, the 4-piston brake, but the lever itself is exactly the same. We've got tool-free reach adjustment here, so you've got a little dial for adjusting the reach of the brake lever, which is really nice, really easy to use. There's the free stroke adjuster. That's a little bolt in here used with a Phillips head screwdriver. Doesn't seem to do a whole lot. That's pretty standard for the other XT and Shimano brakes I've tested with this particular doohickey. But yes, so you can get this brake in that 2-piston or the 4-piston option. Now, while we're down here, we'll have a look at the new XT hubs. Not a whole lot different on the front hub here. It's a forged alloy hub shell. It'll be available with various configurations, various axle widths and spoke drillings and so on. We've got, of course, cup and cone bearings, which are serviceable. Shimano will be selling spare bearing kits and spare axle kits for these. Out back, we have a new rear hub design, and this is all about being able to fit this huge 10-51 cassette. So inside we have the Micro Spline FREEHUB design, and it's a smaller diameter than the previous Shimano HG FREEHUB. So to run this big cassette, if you want to go 12 speed, you have to get a Micro Spline rear hub. So we'll give you a bit of a listen to the noise here. The way the mechanism works inside the rear hub is more like a Chris King or a DT Swiss hub. It's a ratchet type system, a kind of clutch mechanism, rather than a traditional spring and pull free hub. So the sound is quite similar to those DT Swiss, Chris King, that kind of hub. And the engagement is around 7 degrees, so it's quite fast. So overall, my first impressions of the Shimano XT Groupset, really positive. I actually came off the XTR Groupset last week. I was out riding the Pivot Mach 4 SL, and that particular bike came set up with a full XTR 1x12 drivetrain and XTR race brake. So it's been a really good comparison to see how XT compares. In terms of shift quality, the two are very similar. That nice punchy trigger shifter up there has got a very similar feel to the XTR shifter. Perhaps it's ever so slightly less smooth than the XTR cassette and chain, but the difference is very minor. In terms of weight between the two group sets, Shimano says like for like, the XT group set is around 365 grams heavier than an XTR group set. So there is a bit of weight there, and most of that comes down to materials. Particularly with the cassette, there's no titanium in this cassette where there is in the XTR version, and a bit of weight difference in the cranks as well. So mostly a materials difference. In terms of performance and functionality, very similar. I'm really liking the new brakes. These new M8100 brake levers, combined with the previous 2-piston caliper, calipers, the braking is a little smoother, a little bit more modulation there early on in the stroke, but still good, very good power. That said, I think the 4-piston brake is the one to go for. That's got a little bit more power. They say about 22% more power when you go from the 2-piston to the 4-piston calipers. But the main difference for me was the improved modulation. That was something that I noticed. Really good fine-tune control on those 4-piston brakes. So I think in terms of at that XT level, if you're not worried about a few grams, and I think it's maybe 30 or 40 grams more when you go to the 4-piston caliper, I think the improvement in power and braking feel is going to be worth it for a lot of trail riders. So yeah, very impressed with the braking on this new XT M8100 group set, and very impressed with the drivetrain as well. No chain drops, very smooth drive feel, no issues there at all with the chain. And in terms of the HYPERGLIDE Plus shifting on the rear cassette, absolutely incredible how badly you can treat the rear cassette on this bike. You can mash through gears, out of the saddle, under power in a way that you really shouldn't, and it just responds. It just shifts super, super fast. There's really very little lag when you're shifting, even when you're out of the saddle hammering on the pedals. So you can kind of forget everything you were taught when you first jumped on a mountain bike about backing off on the pedal pressure when you're trying to change gears. With this HYPERGLIDE Plus cassette, you can be as horrible as you want to the gears, and they just seem to take it and shift every single time. So I think that's a real standout feature of this new 12-speed XT cassette, which is mirrors the performance of XTR very, very closely. What you want to do now is stick around for my SLX video. I've been riding the SLX group set, and I've got plenty to talk about in terms of the performance of that group set as well. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel for more video reviews coming your way. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this video review of the new Shimano XT 1x12 M8100 group set, and I'll see you guys next time. Tooroo!